Welcome, dear students, to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. K.S. Nagaraja of Deccan College, Pune, teaching the course of Historical Linguistics. Today, we will look at the module Languages of South Asia. So far, we have taken for granted that there are languages all around us, and they undergo various changes in due course of time. So we have looked at the various types of changes possible in languages. Coming to South Asia, we see that there are lots of languages. In fact, one survey says that there are around 7,000 languages in the world. However, in our own country, the number comes to somewhere between 400 to 500 languages. Why we have to give a range is the question of determining what is a language and what is a dialect. In fact, we have various sources through which we can get information about languages. In fact, it is a common knowledge that anywhere in our country, any village for that matter, we can see speakers speaking more than one language. That automatically tells us that there are many languages around us. So in this particular course, we take a survey of the languages and how we get information about the languages and what are the families to which these languages can be arranged. Because already we know the concept of a language family from the earlier modules. So in this module, we identify the families to which they belong. And so in this particular module, we'll make a survey only because the following modules will discuss each families specifically, taking into account their distribution, character features, and other things. How this Indian subcontinent got populated as it is. This must have been a continuous process stretched over a couple of millennia or much more. This has resulted in a very complex multitude of people belonging to various groups and speaking different divergent languages as well. The number is more than 400 according to one list, or even according to others is much more. Even then, one can see some resemblances across them, both from language point of view and from social point of view. Only when a community exists, then only a language or a speech form can exist, otherwise not. How many communities existed and how many have been lost in the journey of time, no one can say for sure. But at least we can take a stock of the present situation. This course makes such an attempt. A starting point to appreciate the diversity of languages is to look at the vocabulary of the languages. Take a sample list as given below from different Indian languages representing all the four major families. It will be interesting to find out how many languages you can identify among them. Do you find any similarities between any two or more languages? You can provide some more data known to you to that list. I will not read the list here. Students may read them. In fact, we have provided data from 6 languages, 6 Indian languages to be sure, and they all represent 4 language families. Some of the words taken for consideration, all from what may be called basic vocabulary: hand, foot, eye, ear, nose, face, child. The first two languages in the above table one will be able to identify easily. The first one is Kannada, a Dravidian language, and the second one is Hindi, an Indo-Aryan language. It is possible to provide list of cognate languages of these families quite easily. However, the rest of the languages are mostly unknown and so difficult to identify them. In the above list, two languages supposed to show genetic, though somewhat remote, relationship. Will it be possible to identify them? The languages of India belong to several language families. In fact, already we mentioned at least four. The major ones being the Indo-Aryan, a branch of Indo-European, spoken by almost 72% of Indian people, and the Dravidian family, spoken by 24% of the people. Other languages spoken in India account for the remaining around 1% of the population, belong to the Austroasiatic, Tibeto-Burman, Andamanese, etc., and a few language isolates as well. More than 3 millennia of language contact has led to significant mutual influence among the four predominant language families in mainland India and South Asia. Introductory notes are given here. One, Indo-Aryan, a sub-branch of Indo-European family. It was the Florentine merchant Filippo Sassetti who, after 5 years stay in Goa, 1583-1588, declared for the first time that there existed a definite relation between Sanskrit and some of the principal languages of Europe. That this relation is due to origin from a common source was suggested only in 1786 by Sir William Jones in his famous address to the Asiatic Society of Bengal. Indo-Aryan languages developed and emerged in three stages called Old Indo-Aryan, probably from 1500 BCE to 600 BCE. Indo-Aryan languages are actually a sub-branch of Indo-Iranian languages, which itself is a sub-branch of Indo-European family. The Old Indo-Aryan supposed to have been in existence between 1500 BCE to 600 BCE. Then the second stage of Indo-Aryan, Middle Indo-Aryan, starts around 600 BCE to almost 1000 AD, and the new Indo-Aryan languages emerge around 1000 AD to the present. So in the Middle Indo-Aryan stage, we have what may be called Pali and Prakrit languages, and the later stages called Apabhramsha stage. So modern North Indian languages such as Hindi, or more correctly as per some scholars, Hindustani, Assamese, Bengali, Gujarati, Marathi, Punjabi, Rajasthani, and Odia evolved into distinct recognizable languages in the new Indo-Aryan age. The southern Indian languages are from the Dravidian family. The Dravidian languages are supposed to be indigenous to the Indian subcontinent. Proto-Dravidian language was spoken in India in the 4th millennium BCE and started disintegrating into various branches around 3rd millennium BCE. However, many Dravidian linguists consider otherwise. Dravidian scholar Thomas Burrow, in his extensive research 1958, has discussed the evidence for Dravidian and Munda influence on Vedic Sanskrit and strongly feels that the Dravidian speech which exerted this influence, presumably at the time when the audience were still located mainly in the Punjab, must have been a northern Dravidian language. Linguistic evidence gathered so far strongly suggests that the present locations of Dravidian languages result from a number of distinct movements involving a number of groups of speakers. We cannot assume that all of the Dravidian speakers came from the west by the same route or at the same time. Some might have come through Afghanistan via the mountain passes of river valleys. Others may have come along the coast, possibly by sea. The present distribution of Brahvi, Kudukh and Malto, three of the Dravidian languages, suggests two main possibilities for their earlier prehistoric distribution. One is that proposed by Burrow, the present-day Brahvi, Kudukh and Malto represent surviving islands of a speech once extant over all of northern India and Pakistan. Another is suggested by the tradition that the speakers of Kudukh and Malto came up the Narmada Valley from the west coast in fairly recent times. In 1972, Zwelabel, a Dravidian scholar, proposed a hypothesis that the Dravidians marched from the mountains of eastern Iran to South India and Sri Lanka, dropping off groups along the way rather like a bus depositing passengers. According to him, the Dravidians were a Highlander folk sitting sometimes around 4000 BC in the rugged mountainous areas of northeastern Iran, whence around about 3500 BC they began a southeastern movement into the Indian subcontinent, which went on for about 2.5 millennia. Along the route, various Dravidian speaking tribes peeled off the main stock, the first to come off being the peoples speaking some form of northwestern Dravidian, who might have played an important, even a leading role in the ethno-linguistic composition of the Indus Valley peoples. The movement went on, and with it the losses along the route, until the southernmost part of the peninsula was reached by the Proto-Tamils, who established between ca 600 to 400 BC the first historically recognizable literate and highly cultured Dravidian speaking civilization. Also, he has added Andronov's schematic chart showing the possible descent of the Dravidians, and the chart can be seen at the end of this course. Now we move on to the third language family, which is called Austro-Asiatic language family. Austro meaning south, Asia is Asia, of course, is supposed to be the native people or native family in South Asia, and Southeast Asia, in other language families having arrived by migration. More than 150 languages belonging to this family are spread across Southeast Asia, starting from West or Central India to Vietnam, spread across many countries. But in India itself, only one branch, namely Munda, a Munda sub-branch, and two languages belonging to another sub-branch, that is Mon Khmer, namely Khasi and Nicobarese, are spoken. The fourth family, Tibeto-Burman family. It is assumed that they have been moving from north and east for over centuries and have occupied the present locations, that is the Himalayan belt from the west to east in Arunachal Pradesh, and the eastern states through Brahmaputra Delta and Myanmar, and it is supposed to be a continuous one, and till recently the migration must have taken place. Most of the Tibeto-Burman languages are spoken in inaccessible mountain areas, and many or most of them are unwritten, which has greatly hampered their study. It is generally much easier to identify a language as Tibeto-Burman than to determine its precise relationship with other languages of the group. The Constitution of India does not give any language the status of national language. The Constitution of India rather designates the official language of the Government of India as Standard Hindi, written in the Devanagari script as well as English. The 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution lists 22 languages till recently, which have been referred to as scheduled languages and given recognition, status and official encouragement. In addition, the Government of India has awarded the distinction of classical language to Sanskrit, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam and Odia. According to Census of India of 2001, India has 122 major languages and 1599 other languages. However, figures from other sources vary, primarily due to differences in definition of the terms language, dialect and mother tongue. The 2001 census recorded 30 languages which were spoken by more than 1 million native speakers and 122 which were spoken by more than 10,000 people. Two contact languages have played an important role in the history of India, that is Persian and English. Persian was a court language during the Mughal period in India. It reigned as an administrative language for several centuries until the era of British colonization. Up until now, English is an important language in India. It is used in higher education and in some areas of the Indian government as well. Hindi, the most widely spoken language in India today, serves as the lingua franca across much of North and Central India. However, there have been anti-Hindi agitations in South India, most notably in the state of Tamil Nadu. There is also opposition in non-Hindi belt states towards any perceived imposition of Hindi in these areas. Inventories of languages. The first official survey of language diversity in the Indian subcontinent was carried out by Sir George Abraham Grierson from 1898 to 1928. Titled The Linguistic Survey of India, it reported a total of 179 languages and 544 dialects. However, the results were skewed due to ambiguities in distinguishing between dialect and language, untrained personnel, and underreporting of data from South India, as the former provinces of Burma and Madras, as well as the princely states of Cochin, Hyderabad, Mysore and Travancore were not included in the survey. Different sources give widely differing figures, primarily based on how the terms language and dialect are defined and grouped. Ethnologue produced by SIL International lists 461 tongues for India out of 619,912 worldwide, 447 of which are living, while 14 are supposed to be extinct. The 447 living languages are further subclassified in Ethnologue as follows: institutional 63, developing 130, vigorous 187, and in trouble 54, and dying 13. The People of India project of Anthropological Survey of India reported 325 languages which are used for in-group communication by 5,633 Indian communities. One can get authentic information about the Indian languages primarily from Grierson's Linguistic Survey of India and Government of India's decennial census operations. So a bird's view of census operations is given here. The Census of India records and publishes data with respect to the number of speakers for languages and dialects, but uses its own unique terminology distinguishing between language and mother tongue. The mother tongues are grouped within each language. Many of the mother tongues so defined could be considered a language rather than a dialect by linguistic standards. This is especially so for many mother tongues with tens of millions of speakers that are officially grouped under the language Hindi. So we start with 1961 census reports. The 1961 census recognized 1,652 mother tongues spoken by 438 million people, counting all declarations made by any individual at the time when the census was conducted. However, the declaring individuals often mix names of languages with those of dialect, subdialect, and dialect clusters, or even castes, professions, religions, localities, regions, countries, and nationalities. The list, therefore, includes languages with barely a few individual speakers, as well as reported in as well as 601 unclassified mother tongues, and more than 100 idioms that are non-native to India, including linguistically unspecific demonyms such as African, Canadian, Belgian, etc. It has been shown in the report of Central Institute of Indian Languages, Mysore, published in 1973, that out of the so-called 1,652 mother tongues, 601 are unclassified. 532 belong to Indo-Aryan, 148 belong to Dravidian, 227 belong to Tibeto-Chinese, and 53 to Ostiak group. What is interesting is that out of this, those mother tongues having more than 10,000 speakers are 98 Indo-Aryan, 26 Dravidian, 52 Tibeto-Chinese, 21 Ostiak, and only 7 in the unclassified group. This total comes to hardly 204. The study also reveals that there are 471 mother tongues having 5 or less than 5 speakers, 695 mother tongues having 6 to 999 speakers, 136 mother tongues having 1,000 to 4,999 speakers, and 53 mother tongues having speaker strength of above 5,000 but below 10,000. At the face value of it, the report is highly startling, as most of the mother tongues are susceptible to be lost. Unfortunately, the later census reports do not throw any light on this majority, losing much of the significance of such a major operation. We move to 1991 census. The 1991 census recognizes 1,576 classified mother tongues. According to the 1991 census, 22 languages had more than a million native speakers, 50 had more than 1 lakh speakers, and 114 had more than 10,000 native speakers. The remaining accounted for a total of 5,66,000 native speakers out of a total of 838 million Indians in 1991. 2001 census reports. According to this report, there are 1,365 rationalized mother tongues, 234 identifiable mother tongues, and 22 major languages. Of these, 29 languages have more than a million native speakers, 60 have more than 1 lakh, and 122 have more than 10,000 native speakers. There are a few languages like Kodava that do not have a script but have a group of native speakers in Coorg. Actually, there are two more languages. One is Ahom language, which belongs to southwestern Thai language, had once been the dominant language of Ahom kingdom in modern day Assam, but had been replaced later by Kamrupi language, the ancient form of Assamese language. And one more is what is called, there is a community called Thai community who remain in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. In fact, it is a Tibeto-Burman language, Thai Pake or Thai Ahom, and also Thai Khamti language, which are similar to Shan language of Shan state of Myanmar. So, but the speakers are very few in number. To summarize then, this particular course is only an overview of the languages of South Asia. So even though the area as such is a fairly small one, when we take the rest of the world, there are innumerable languages and dialects, as have already mentioned by Greyerson's Linguistic Survey of India, and periodically the Census of India mentions about these things. In fact, we know quite a bit about these languages. So this particular module also it mentions about a few other languages like Thai Kadai, like Khamti, spoken in the northeast, and which is a variety of Thai, a remnant of the earlier stage. So taking those into account, we see that the dominant four language families are very much clear-cut and is well accepted as such. And then there are other languages. More of these languages, of these families, will be considered in the other modules which will follow now.